Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Film Hub NI podcast. In June, Docs Ireland ran very successfully 4 days of screenings, events and competitions, bringing the best of international and local documentary to Belfast. As part of the festival, we were delighted to host an event at the Ulster Museum with Shane Smith, Director of Programming at Hot Docs, North America's largest festival and market for documentary film. In front of an audience of doc lovers and doc makers, we found out how Shane started in the industry, we discovered some of the dark arts of how Hot Docs selects its content, and how they are spreading the gospel of documentary far beyond the boundaries of North America. We were delighted to have Shane with us, so thanks to him, Stuart Sloan and the Docs Ireland team, and especially to Scott Duffield for his recording skills. We'll be back soon with an update on Cinema Day 2019, but until then, sit back and enjoy this discussion brought to you by the BFI's Film Audience Network. You're all very welcome to this Docs Ireland and Film Hub NI event, and we're delighted to say that we're joined from Toronto, which is not in Ireland, by Shane Smith, whose full title is Director of Programming at Hot Docs in Toronto, which is, I believe, the world's largest documentary festival.
North America's.
Yes. Okay.
IDFA's got to speak.
I suppose, yeah. Well, that's enough for you. But we're delighted that Shane could join us today for a short workshop chat about programming of documentaries. We're going to look at how festivals work. We're going to talk a little bit about, obviously, Shane's career and how you came up, and the kind of future plans that might be there as well. But also, we're here to engage with you and answer questions that you might have. Before we get into the discussion, can I have a kind of show of hands? Who are exhibitors? Any exhibitors here? Yeah, we've got exhibitors. Don't be shy now. We got programmers, people who program maybe multi-arts. Programmer there. Journalists, any journalists in the room? Filmmakers? There's the filmmakers. There's the filmmakers all sitting together. I know this as well. Yeah, sort of en masse. That's good. Come on in, grab a seat. We're just going around the room, sort of talking about where you're all from, your background. Are you filmmakers or exhibitors, programmers? Producers. Well, welcome the producers. Notice you're all sitting together as well. I'm worried that there's a division. This is some kind of sort of Brexit thing going on here. Sure. But you're all very welcome, and we'll all have a chance to ask questions of Shane as we go along. But we'll get into it. Shane, prior to TIFF, I've got quite a long list of things that you have done before you went to Hot Docs. So you were director of special projects at Toronto International Film Festival. You were executive producer for Spafex, who managed the sort of in-flight entertainment for Air Canada. Yeah. Director of programming at Channel Zero, director the CFC Worldwide Short Film Festival, short film programmer at Sundance Film Festival, and program director for Inside Out, the LGBT Film Festival. Yeah. That's a long list.
I've been around.
Yeah, well, that's experience. With that sort of CV, it might be interesting. How did you get started in the industry?
Briefly, my degree is in film studies, filmmaking, and I learned very quickly I didn't want to be a filmmaker. So kudos to you guys, because that's hard work. But then I started volunteering at a local film festival when I moved to Canada from Australia, and had time on my hands and just sort of worked my way up that way. Stuck around, had time, and committed. And I think, I trotted out as a bit of a volunteer success story. Yeah. At any organization I'm with, to show that volunteering can get you places. Although if I was starting out now, I don't know that I'd be able to get where I am. So I think it was luck, timing, commitment, and just soaking up as much as I could in the institutions that I worked with.
What was it about exhibitions that excited you? What was it that interested you?
I think when I went to my first film festival, when I went to university in Sydney, to the Sydney Film Festival, and the first screening was in this amazing old picture palace. Yeah. In the center of Sydney, and that's where I fell in love with festivals. But I didn't know that could be a career or job opportunity until I moved to Canada and started seeing how many are there. Toronto itself has something like 70 film festivals.
Really?
In the city.
In one city?
There's one for everybody, plus. So some weekends there's 3 or 4 film festivals happening, and learning about that and seeing how much film culture there was and that people came out for it was really inspiring. And I found that on the programming side, I could utilize my skills to the benefit of filmmakers doing amazing work. And that what I could bring was the element of supporting that work, nurturing it, promoting it, getting it out there, talking about it, and providing a platform for those stories, those important stories to be told.
I suppose working across so many different kinds of roles in the industry, within exhibition certainly and programming, does that give you a sense of audiences? Does it, how different audiences react to different kinds of films, titles of work, and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've worked at a lot of different film festivals, from LGBTQ festival to short film festival. I started an Australian film festival in Toronto, and then at TIFF. So I've learned about programming for the audience, and I think that's one of the key skills as a curator, as a programmer, is thinking outside of yourself, programming outside of yourself. Of course, you need to have an appreciation or affection or a love for the films that you're seeing, but you have to be able to think outside yourself about the audience that you're trying to reach and hoping will come to those films. So I've learned a lot about that.
Because I would imagine programming for in-flight entertainment is a very different kind of element, because you have a much broader range of films, much bigger choice, but also a sense that if somebody's trapped in a flight for 10 hours, it's a different kind of experience. Someone chooses to buy a ticket to come.
That was the beauty of programming for an airline, is that you could put stuff in front of people that they would never watch normally. And they're sitting on a plane, they're tapping on, they're bored to death, they will take a chance. And Air Canada was great because they championed Canadian films, so we always had a Canadian section on Air Canada. And the amount of filmmakers that I would hear from, people would find after they'd watched their films on Air Canada, they'd find them on Facebook and tell them, I saw your film, I never would have seen it otherwise, I love your film. And filmmakers would tell me they would hear more from people who saw their film on a plane than did in the cinema, than did on TV, than in any other venue, because they were blown away by the opportunity to see those kinds of films that were put in front of them. They were a captive audience, and a lot of them took advantage of that. It was a nice bonus to the job, playing the Hollywood movies and the X-Men, but then knowing that people were watching.
Yeah, and looking for something different, and an audience as well.
Yeah,
and
that was a key learning about audiences. Yeah. If you give them the work, show them the work, lead them towards the work, they will come, and they will be they'll be open to it.
Yeah, and also it helps that Air Canada is one of the last old school kind of airlines. They give you a blanket and decent food. Maybe it's changed.
I don't work there anymore, so I can speak freely.
So we move on, just to hone in on documentaries. Obviously, we are, this is what all people who work in the industry say, it's a very exciting time for documentaries. What do you, as someone who leads and a cultural leader in the sector, what do you think that the reasons, the factors that have led to this kind of upsurge in documentaries and the interest from audiences and the interest from filmmakers?
I think it's been a long time coming, but it feels like in the last 5 or 6 years it's been accelerated. The attention, the support, the awareness of documentary. And I think, the online availability, the streaming platforms have played a role in that most recently. Netflix, in particular, as one that's most widely available, has documentaries front and center in their programming. Documentaries are in front of people all the time. So similarly to being on an airplane, you're sitting at home, you're flicking through, you're looking at these postcard images, and then you're reading about a subject or a story you had no idea about, and your interest is piqued. It's there. So these documentaries are fed to you. They're available to you in a way that they didn't used to be. When it was linear TV, you had to seek it out, or you'd be flicking through the channels and you'd come across it, and maybe you'd stick around, maybe you wouldn't. But it's right there in front of you all the time. It's not an ordeal or a hassle or something special to have to seek out a documentary. That's there for you. And I think everyone's a documentary watcher, even if they don't consider themselves a documentary fan. We all watch them, whether we say we love them or not. Yeah. But now they're there, there's an awareness. And I think the creativity and the skills of filmmakers, storytelling, has gone a long way to taking away the stigma that documentaries used to have. I think we all watched them in school and we were force-fed them there, and not always the best documentaries, not often the best documentaries. So the creativity of documentary filmmakers filmmakers. That has just erupted too in the last, I'd say, 10 years as well. And so that combination of factors has really led to heightened awareness, desire for people to see documentaries, and then results in terms of sales and box office, particularly in North America, where at the moment documentaries are sort of saving the independent box office and cinemas right now.
Yeah, I mean a film like Free Solo, those kind of huge
RBG, Mr. Rogers, what you mean?
Yeah, and people want to watch those collectively as well. Is kind of part of it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, one of the things we've seen in Northern Ireland is an upsurge of political documentaries, documentaries about the past, about the legacy of the past and so on. And to a certain extent, with a kind of political vacuum, if you like, documentaries fill that space. Do you think that there's a political impulse behind documentary is kind of explaining the difficulties of the world to audiences, and audiences want to engage with it through that kind of platform?
Yeah, I think that's a key element. Yeah, I do. Definitely at the festival, audiences we live in dark times and there's a lot of crazy shit going on. So documentary filmmakers are able to help shine a light and explain the world to us, or share the world with us, or show the world to us in interesting, enlightened ways. And I think audiences are hungry for answers, for explanations, for insights, and that's one of the key roles that documentary filmmakers can play. I mean, I think here as an example, the little I know about here is that there's a lot of unresolved, unreconciled stories, feelings, history here, and that political documentaries can really play an important role in opening up spaces for the conversations that aren't happening politically or generally in public. So in Canada, for example, there's a lot happening with Indigenous populations and truth and reconciliation in Canada. There's a lot of unresolved issues from the past that haven't been addressed, that are starting to bubble up in the films that are being made, particularly by Indigenous filmmakers who haven't traditionally had that platform and that access. That is leading to a whole lot of conversations, often uncomfortable conversations, but important ones that need to be had. And I think one of the key roles of festivals is opening up the space for those conversations to be had in a public forum. People are looking for some catharsis, some information, maybe even some healing. And I think that is something that documentary in general and documentary festivals specifically can provide a platform for.
Okay, well, I'd like you to you used this term on the phone earlier in the week to lift the curtain slightly on your process as an artist. How does the Hot Docs program come together? What's the process of decision making?
So, where to begin? So every year we open up submissions, we get films from around the world, we get something like 3,000 films submitted each year, which is daunting. And that's features, mid-lengths and shorts, films from around the world. And that's just in sort of the last 18 or 16 months of production. So we only look at films from the prior year as we're programming the next year. What we have is a committed team of programmers. There's about, I think, 15, 16 of us who come on board starting in November and then watch films all through the winter, which is the best time to be watching documentaries in Canada. Nothing else you want to be doing. So they watch sometimes up to 50 feature documentaries a week. They've all got quotas and they commit the time and the energy. They're paid programmers, so we don't use pre-screeners at Hot Docs. So they're all paid. They are divided up. The Canadians look at the Canadian work. I have some shorts programmers. I have two focused on mid-length films, and then I have the largest team is the international team. So they look at the work. They bring it up to the programming table. We meet once a week, and we talk about the films that they've watched that they like, that they want to discuss further, they want to bring along in the process. They also have the power to remove films from further consideration.
So they're quite empowered as
They are. Yeah, that's partly why they're paid programmers also. They are serious and they're responsible for the decisions they make. Okay. And those decisions are made and recorded. We have a database. They record their notes on the films, their ratings. I can go in at any time and look at what they've said or what they've thought about a film.
So it's a transparent process.
It is, in general.
Within the team.
Yeah, within the team, for sure. So they bring up the films that they want to talk about at the meeting, and we sit in a room for 2, 3, 4 hours every week talking through the films that we've discussed. Okay. And there are so many perspectives and viewpoints in that room and about those films that it can be a very robust conversation. But we are looking to shape a program for our audience in Toronto, for the industry audience that comes to Hot Docs looking for new films. So there's, almost 3,000 accredited industry delegates at the festival every year, and part of my mandate is to provide them with work to see and acquire, and filmmakers to meet and potentially work with. So that's one part of my mandate. The other is serving our audience in Toronto. So we are bearing that in mind as we're discussing the films that we're watching. Then those films are that we discussed that we want to look at more are assigned to another programmer. So they get a second watch. And then, if that program is on board as well, then I'll get them. So they filter up to me, which is fantastic. I only get to see the good stuff. Yeah. But there's a lot of good stuff. And
so, just in terms of the numbers, you've got 3,000 coming in.
Yeah.
What do you end up with normally?
In the program is usually around 230. That's features, mids, and shorts. Probably about 60 shorts, about 20 mids, and the remainder features.
So that's quite a lot of wet length. That's quite
it is. It's less than 10%, which is a small number. So it's a very competitive.
And when people are submitting to you, is there anything that you recommend? Do you set a yearly theme or that sort of thing, or is it really a kind of what we would call here a camolie, that it's a kind of it's a festival of everything?
Yeah. I think because the festival is so large, in a way, there's room for all of the flavors of documentary, all of the styles, all kinds of documentaries. But we're also looking for as representative a program as possible, not only in style, subject, content, but also in countries that we're representing. We're also taking into consideration gender, looking for parity as much as possible. So there are a lot of those other factors coming into play. We don't theme the program of the festival in any year, but what we do have is 2 amorphous sections that are theme programs, the themes of which emerge from the work that we're seeing. So if we're looking at films and starting to see that there's an interesting current running through several of the films that have come up through the process, then we'll look at ways to put those films together into a program that is complementary to them, but also provides a hook for audience to attract them to films that they might not otherwise stand out.
Here's a question for you. So in terms of, very often festivals play a kind of a difficult game of controversy. In terms of controversy will often generate talk and that sort of stuff. Yeah. Have there ever been occasions where you've taken a film that you weren't sure whether the quality was quite high, but the interest in the subject was there?
I think that's a matter of perspective.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I think yes. I mean, we've taken films in which the filmmaking may not be quite at the level that we'd like it to be, but the power of the subject and the story trumps it. Yeah. We know that an audience will come, an audience will be into the film, an audience will want to see it and will want to talk about it. And the whole business of what we do is incredibly subjective, and I'm always every year surprised by films that the audience will gravitate towards, that we were like, oh yeah, I guess we'll show this. There's a reason to show it, there's an audience for it, but they'll come to it, they'll love it, they'll rave about it. We'll give it incredibly high audience ratings. So, I mean, we're looking at a diverse program in that way. And yeah, we'll absolutely include films that we may not think the craft is quite there, but we know the subject is there, the story's there. And then, on the flip side of that, we'll reject films that, are incredibly beautifully made, incredibly well shot, very well crafted, but the story isn't there. It's just not there's not enough there. And we know that we believe that audiences will leave, unfulfilled or dissatisfied by what they've seen.
It's very interesting. I mean, I think in terms of the wider offer of Hot Docs is very interesting. I mean, what Hot Docs is obviously the festival, and that's the front end. But there's a huge amount of activity that you do in terms of across the year, but also worldwide as well. I mean, is that Is that a strategic decision in terms of how, I mean, the festival's 25 years old now, is that right?
26.
26 years old, so it's quite long established, and it can now stretch out its kind of legs around the world in that sense.
Yeah.
Does that have an impact on the programme?
I mean,
the festival?
The festival was started 26 years ago by documentary filmmakers and producers Canadian documentary filmmakers and producers who felt that their work wasn't being seen by international industry, decision makers, buyers, commissioning editors. So they started a festival to bring those folks into Toronto to look at Canadian work. And it wasn't started as a public-facing festival. That changed after about the first five or six years. So it's always at its core been a festival designed to serve the needs of filmmakers, Canadian filmmakers at the beginning, but more broadly, filmmakers from around the world. And that led to the addition of more industry components, to a pitching forum, which celebrated its 20th anniversary this past year. So all of that, Hot Docs at the core has always been about building, creating, and sustaining and enhancing the ecosystem for documentary in all its forms, starting with the industry component, but also funds. We administer a few $1 million in funds, mostly for Canadian documentaries, but also for some underserved communities. We have a Blue Eyes Fund focused on African filmmakers and developing talent on the continent. That was started by a South African businessman who moved to Canada, but wanted to support the homeland, so we administer that fund. So exhibition is a key part of that too, and about 6 years ago we bought a cinema in Toronto, an old picture palace that's 650 seats, which is a lot of seats for documentaries to fill. But we commit 95% of our programming in that cinema year-round to documentaries. So every year we are continuing to try and build year-round audiences for documentaries.
Do you think that's an approach? Because certainly there's obviously there's one in London, and there's a kind of development of that kind of venue-led documentary engagement. Do you think it develops audiences? Do you think it helps filmmakers, that there's a focus, there's a place?
Yeah, I think it gives, the festival is great for shining a light and bringing a whole lot of attention at one point in time to documentaries and to documentary filmmakers and to the industry to spur business. But then outside of that, the audience is always asking at those screenings, where can I see this? I want to tell people to come see this. When is this coming out? Yeah. And the cinema and the cinemas that we are networked with around the world, there's 5 or 6 documentary-focused cinemas that we have, a sort of group relationship with, share information about what's working on our end, the challenges in our landscape. But the cinema provides that platform year-round for that collective viewing of documentary, and for events and for special screenings and strands and theme programs that help to develop audiences from all kinds of sectors and communities. Enhance the opportunities and the appreciation for documentary.
Because I think for some audiences, festival can be quite an ephemeral thing. It's there every year, and if you organise your life, then you can be there and see everything. Yeah. But it can also often pass you by because it's only 9 days or whatever it might be. And so having a bricks and mortar venue that represents the principles and the values of the festival gives a year-round focus and develops that audience for it. I know it's the sort of thing where you can miss documentaries so easily, and having somewhere where you can get that week run or whatever it might be, you can engage with it on a much better basis.
It's true. Festivals take work and commitment as an audience member to go to. The ticketing, the bigger festivals, the ticketing's not always easier. Screenings will sell out. It can feel sometimes like work to go to a festival, and we try to make that as smooth a process as possible. And yet, if you're working those 10 days, if you're not available for the 3 times of that documentary screening at the festival, we've got this alternative opportunity for you to bring back the films that are a success, that audiences respond to, that we know there's an appetite for. So that the platform of the cinema has been fantastic in just extending the opportunities for audiences to see them. And we have a membership program too at the cinema. We have 10,000 members.
10,000?
Year-round, they come, they get discounts on tickets, get a little free popcorn here and there. But they get to engage with us, and we get to engage with them year-round and let them know what's happening in documentary. documentary and give them highlights of the festival and sneak.
So you're building a community.
That's it.
Well,
Yeah.
around it particularly.
Yeah.
I'm really interested. You sent me this document. I would recommend, if you are interested in hot dogs, to look at this document that is available on all good
on our website.
On the website. It's
all
a highlights
good website.
It's an all good website. It's a highlights documentary, or a highlights document that goes through sort of piece by piece what hot dogs achieves. There's a tremendous bit at the end where there's a world map of all the different activity you do across the world. From Afghanistan to Brisbane, where else? So obviously Toronto and Canada and North America, but also as far as Santiago and things like that. And it's very interesting. You have a sort of, or hot dogs has a kind of value of openness and about talking about the work you do.
Yeah.
For many audience members and for people who don't necessarily work in the film industry, it can often be quite a daunting thing, engaging with a film festival, for example. Like Cannes Film Festival, to me, for years, was just a terrifying idea. And
To me, still.
yeah, well, to me, most people who've ever been there. But that kind of getting that in our heads and I think that maybe limits the role, the cultural and sort of leadership role that festivals play.
Yeah.
A document like this, with so many facts and figures about who you're reaching, what kind of films you're showing, there's just sort of transparency behind it.
Yeah.
Publishing your demographics about who's coming,
who the audience is.
who the audience is, all that sort of stuff is very interesting. Why does hot dogs have such an open attitude towards sharing of information and building of networks?
I think part of it goes back to how the festival was started.
Yeah.
Producers, documentary filmmakers who wanted that connection with the industry. And then once the festival became more public, we wanted to share our information about who is coming to your documentaries, who is watching the work that you're making, so that you can use that information with sales agents, with distributors, with cinemas, to let them know that there's an audience for your film and you know who that audience is. It's crucial, for producers and filmmakers to be able to sell their films and to have all of the information they can to help make that happen. So we've done a couple of studies built around discoverability, one about, I think, 7-8 years ago, and then one that was just published late last year, that is an audience survey of where people are finding documentaries, what they're drawn to, where they're watching them, how they're learning about them, and what the touch points are for reaching an audience with a documentary. And some great information has come out of that, particularly the most recent one, which indicated to us from, I think we had about 2,000-3,000 respondents, so a decent amount of people. And this is Canada-wide, so we reached out to Canadian audiences. But a lot of this information can be extrapolated internationally. But audiences are finding documentaries mostly through word of mouth, through people who are seeing them, who are excited and engaged by them and want to share information about them. And that is often, for better or worse, on Facebook. So people are letting people know about the films that they see on Facebook. It's not all bad. No, it's not. And then the other key place that people are learning about and getting attracted to documentaries is through trailers. So the importance of a trailer for a documentary is key and was made really manifest in this study, that someone might tell you about a documentary, then the next step is you're going to want to know, if you're interested, you're going to want to know a bit more about that documentary, you're going to want to see the trailer for that documentary. And that spurred us on to do workshops and to try to we're in the process of creating a marketing fund so that we can provide money to filmmakers to create trailers to help sell their films. So we're doing this research, getting the information and trying to put that into practice in support of the industry, but also share that information with the industry so that they can make informed decisions. And I think part of it is Canadianness. We're very nice there. We're very polite, very helpful.
Not American.
But but part of it is the health of the industry is good for us as well. So it's a little bit self-serving as well. If the industry is healthy, we will be healthy, and we all need to work together to make that happen.
It's an international industry. It lives and breathes that. I mean, we talk of territories and things like that, but it's an international. People who are interested in stories. They're interested. One of the reasons we become the documentary is to engage with stories from around the world.
Exactly.
It's the beauty of documentary film. Sure. You talked somewhere, I think, when you just got the job, about empathy and about the nature of there's the famous Roger Ebert kind of film is a cinema or empathy machines. But there is a sense that kind of empathy with each other, and empathy is a positive thing, you know. And so if you can put that into the work and across the industry, then it can only be a good thing.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think people are most affected when they see a film about a subject they didn't know about, or a person they would walk by on the street, and they get to know that person through the film. It's much harder for you to behave in the same way and to use the excuse of I didn't know, or I wasn't aware, or I was ignorant. Once you've seen the film, you've learned, you've met that person, you've walked a little bit in their shoes, and I think that's the great power of documentary, is connecting us in that way to people, places, and stories that we would never normally engage with. And that's part of, we incorporate that into our programming process as well. Like, what did I learn? What do I know now that I didn't know before? And that's why I feel incredibly privileged to do the job that I do, because I get to travel the world and learn about the world, for better or worse. We see a lot of terrible things in the world in the programming process, but that's one of the great privileges of the work that I do.
It's interesting. I wondered whether you had any, just before I finish monopolising you, there's a festival in Scotland called Take One Action, where they utilise a lot of documentary film, mostly documentary film, and then they set up a kind of system where people can do things and they can become activists afterwards.
Yeah.
Is there anything within Hot Docs in terms of activism and in terms of engaging, you know, because we've all had that feeling when we walk out of a documentary, we go, I want to smash the state and burn down the Babylon, but where do I write to my MP?
Yeah.
And there's a sense that linking documentary and activism, is there anything Hot Docs is looking at?
We are increasingly looking at ways we can make that tangible connection. I mean, at the festival, filmmakers are there, they can share recommendations and next steps and things that audiences can do. But year round, it's a harder thing for us to offer. So we are looking at ways that we can connect the films with the charities, the organizations that are Canadian-based or Toronto-based that connect to the mandate or the theme of the film that we're seeing. And even things like, we're going to try out things, I think probably next year, about, you know, like live donating. You know, click on this link, download this app, and you can donate immediately to a charity of the filmmaker's choice that connects to the story that they're telling. Because we have some wealthy people that come to our documentaries, and if we can inspire them to hand over some cash to help the people or the organizations that they're learning about in these films, we want to make that connection. We've started a fund. We actually have an investment fund, an equity fund called Hot Docs Partners, that's made up of wealthy individuals in Canada and the US who want to contribute to the making of documentaries that appeal to them, that stories that are important to them. So we're harnessing that private wealth. It's a $2.5 million fund that we just launched last year. And we will offer projects to those individuals, and they will decide which ones they want to invest in. They have to commit a minimum investment per year, but they can choose which projects they want to invest and how much they want to invest. But it's a way for us to put their money to good use, and they feel good about what they're doing. Now, it's an investment fund, so there's impetus, investment impetus, but you know, they know going in that they're not always going to make that money back.
Yeah,
they will hopefully feel good about at least, you know, contributing that money, whether it comes back or not. So, you know, we are constantly looking for those opportunities to connect money and awareness and activism to the work that we're showing.
It's very interesting, very positive. Well, yes, as I say, I've monopolised you quite a bit here, asked all the questions I wanted to ask. So, you've got Shane Smith here, programmer of Hot Docs. Would anyone like to ask a question? Okay, yes.
Hi. Hi, thanks very much. I'm Fiona, I'm the producer of the Cork Film Festival. I'm curious, you were talking about processing submissions, and we also receive 3,000-4,000 submissions a year, not all documentary. But how much of the programme would be drawn from the open submissions, and how much would be curated or would be films that are put before you by sales agents or distributors or filmmakers? How do you balance that? Yeah.
It's a good question. It's one that I often get, and I think there's sometimes an assumption that if you don't know somebody at the festival, your film's not going to get in. And speaking for Hot Docs, I can tell you that is, we love nothing more than to discover a film from the general submissions group of films that we knew nothing about, that, you know, we just click on the link and, you know, we're transformed or inspired by that film. So we love to discover, quote unquote, films from the general submissions. That is good for us too, you know, but on the other hand, there's also the sales agents, the distributors, that whole network, the agencies who are presenting you with films, putting films in front of you. And a big part of what I do at some other festivals, IDFA in particular, is meet with those sales agents to find out what they've got. Now they're on the hunt. This is the ecosystem. They're always looking for new films. They're always looking to get in on projects early, and often a lot of good films are coming up through sales agents. So, you know, I can't discount the work that they have, and I think, you know, a decent percentage of films in the festival are going to come attached to a sales agent, whether I've met with them or whether they've just submitted and sent me an email saying that, you know, they've submitted these films to us. And then there's festivals like Sundance, which I go to because I need to find sort of large-scale special presentation documentaries that will fill that 650-seat cinema that we have to fill during the festival. So it's a balancing act when creating the programming of the big, shiny, glossy stuff that is going to get some attention, draw audiences in, and then the smaller, important films that we love that we hope they'll pay attention to, that there'll be some kind of halo effect that will lift all the boats and that will draw audiences to films that they may not otherwise have been aware of. So we're looking for as great a range as possible in the program, and it's coming from various sources, definitely. And we should talk more about how you guys do it too.
Go ahead.
So thanks for your talk. I've got a film screening on Saturday called The Art of Ubuntu. It's using puppetry to share different stories. And one of the things that's actually, I think it's sort of, I don't know if it's a motivation, but in terms of quite a lot of documentaries and in terms of how, because my personal experience of having spent time in prison, I find that there's definitely a stigma and there's a discrimination, but how people refer to people even who have been to prison and how they're labelled. And I find very often there's words like ex-offender, there's convicted criminal, and so one of the things that within my mind, and that what I've found that when I'm working with people, and I find puppetry is a perfect way to collaborate. I've collaborated with people from Palestine, from Syria, from people that were innocent that were put on death row. I can connect with them because of my personal experience and the stigma that I faced, and maybe even within Palestine because I was sent to prison for a protest against the BNP. I have an empathy and understanding of what it's like that maybe other people don't. But it sometimes feels really quite daunting that on this journey as well, it's a lot of my stuff has been self-funded, or the whole kind of funding things has just been a no-no. It's been like, there's no way that, or it's been rejected, or it's like, and that impact has left me to sort of like, I'm going to do this anyway because I have to, because I hear songs in my head, or I have collaboration or stories that come to me, and they have to be told, and I know, because I make puppets myself, collaborations come to me. But sometimes it does, you sometimes on this journey, it feels very lonely, and you feel very sort of like, that even events and things, it's like where there are funding things, it's like, I almost just feel like that's not for me. And maybe some of that as well has been because of personal experiences of applying for jobs and things. I'm not treated the same way as other people. You know, for 10 years I would have to disclose I've got a record. And I want there to be more people who have made the journey like me, who are at a point where they can connect and can have compassion and can have kindness and be creative. And maybe not even just me, people maybe who are asylum seekers, people who are refugees, people who have faced discrimination and things. I'd like there to be more like from even people, particularly maybe from poorer areas of things. But if I'm being very honest, for me, kind of like documentary making, it feels very middle class. And it feels very much like people who can afford to go to universities and think, I haven't studied documentary from university. I've gone to workshops and things and make puppets and things because that's my passion. But I feel like even though my film is Ubuntu, which is about connection and everything else, and done loads of work around forgiveness and things, I feel very much like on the outside, kind of looking in, and would love to see there more kind of discussions and things about diversity, more things about inclusivity, and more things about how people who have come from marginalised groups can feel like actually this is for them. You know, maybe people in, like here, I lived for a year, I'm going on a bit, but I lived for a year in a place called Quaker Cottage, and I worked with people from both sides within the community. And I kind of wonder how many of those people would be coming to something like this. It just, these things to me very much feel like, I'm sorry if I'm going on, but it sometimes feels very sort of middle class. It doesn't feel like this is something for working class people. And I would love to see more things like even within prisons or in places whereby people can actually see, because I've seen that there is so much talent and ability that doesn't get tapped into because someone hasn't gone out there to actually pull it together. And
sorry to interrupt, but you make a really good point about access and inclusivity, and I think that conversation is happening more than it was happening 3 to 5 years ago, for sure. In fact, on our submission form, we ask the filmmaker or the producer, whoever's submitting, to tell us about the relationship of the people whose story that they have with the people whose story that they're telling, because it's a conversation that comes up in the programming room around who is telling this story. Are they just parachuting in to a community that they have no connection with, taking a story? Indigenous filmmakers are increasingly saying extracting a story, that storytelling is an extractive industry as much as mining is, taking those stories and then delivering them in a way that isn't authentic, that isn't the same as if the people who are from that world and that community isn't told in the same way that those people would tell that story. And I think that's definitely a conversation that is very much happening on an ongoing basis in Canada at the moment, particularly around access. Who is the audience? You'll see from our stats that our audience is older, is white for the most part, and is educated and has money. So that's the audience that's coming. But how do we try to rectify that on the filmmaking end? And the Blue Ice Fund in Africa is definitely about helping people to tell their stories from their perspective, from within their communities. It's a key conversation. I think change is slowly starting to happen. But yeah, you make a very good point about that.
I think a lot of working class communities in the UK would feel that their representation on television, certainly through sort of reality TV documentaries, whatever they might be, has been endlessly pejorative and actually extremely damaging. And that's been a very difficult thing, and one that is slowly being addressed, but not really. And I think the institutions here, I'm not speaking for the BFI, but the BFI is slowly addressing this issue about access and inclusivity, but it's not going to happen very quickly. These big organisations, big funders, they take a long time to move. But I think the conversations are certainly happening.
The conversation around gender equity, accessibility, has really just hit the zeitgeist the last 3-4 years, and God, how overdue is that conversation? And that's opening up.
60s. You know what I mean? Where were we?
And that's opening up now. That's opening up the other conversations about, okay, let's talk about cultural diversity. Let's talk about class. Let's talk about LGBTQ makers. So it's coming. I can see it coming. And how fast it will continue to develop is to be determined. But at least we're talking about it. We're thinking about it. We're asking the question about who made this film and who is telling this story. And in terms of accessibility to the festival, our daytime screenings at the festival every day before 5 o'clock are free if you're a student or if you're a senior. So we want to provide that level at least of accessibility. But if you're underemployed or if you're unemployed, we don't offer that to you yet. So those are other conversations that we're having about who can come. We feel like, oh great, we're doing great, and then there's always another community or a sector or an audience that you're not reaching, and that you need to work harder to reach.
That's the point.
Sorry, apologies for the phone. I left somebody else's phone. It's in my bag. Just to pick up on
Yeah, not always.
honestly,
Someone else's phone.
that's a whole other story.
Talk after.
just to pick up on what you were saying and what you were talking about in reality TV. I mean, you know a bit of my background with community engagement and that. I would maybe come at it from more of a visual arts perspective, but using video. But how much pressure do you think the likes of Channel 4 and Channel 5 are under when they make these reality documentaries? Because they're probably cheap to make and they're sensational. But how much, you know, the damage that you were saying about they do. Some of them are good. We all know that. I mean, you scratch the surface. But I mean, there's that pressure there then, you know, because they have audience figures to, you know, and shareholders. Maybe it's not, you know, the answer to. So it sort of comes back to what you were saying about that relationship and, you know, that middle class, you know, that class thing. It's still very relevant here in the UK.
Definitely. I mean, it's not as present in Canada, but it's there in different ways. You know, in Canada, we tell ourselves that we're egalitarian, that we're not America, we're not racist like America. But I think we're a little more quietly racist, politely racist. We don't. It's not as obvious, but it's just as insidious in certain ways. So,
Especially if you're Indigenous.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, and it was very obvious if you're Indigenous in the 60s. You know, if you're, you know, you weren't allowed to speak your language, you were put in a residential school, your children were taken from you and adopted, and you didn't know, adopted out, you didn't know where they were. Like that, we're dealing with the repercussions and the historic trauma of that in our Indigenous population, and they're increasingly vocal about having space, taking up space, you know, demanding space for those stories to be heard, and for audiences to see those stories, and white audiences to respond to those stories and take responsibility for the actions of the past.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Marcel Ryan, I'm the director. Could you talk a little bit about, maybe give a few insights into the forum, you know, and submitting to the forum, and and also, you know, if a project is pitched there, does that make it more likely it could kind of, you know, be programmed in the festival? And just a second question, like, do hot dogs prefer films there to, like, for the film to be having its North American premiere? Does it matter if it's, you know, if it's, do you prefer orange premieres, or, you know, like, is it okay showing in Europe? Festival?
I'll start with the forum, the industry side of things. So we run a pitching forum that is built on the model of IDFA's pitching forum. You know, they helped us set it up 20 years ago. We select 20 projects from around the world. Probably a fifth of those are Canadian, but then the rest are from around the world. From about 200 odd submissions every year, and those projects are pitched in a room on the university campus downtown in Toronto. It's a bit like Hogwarts meets Dragon's Den. It's a very interesting, visually interesting process. And at a big table are decision makers from around the world, commissioning editors, broadcasters, buyers, distributors. So those projects are pitched live, and there's an audience of 500 industry people who are also there to track those projects. So the forum on a macro level builds awareness and provides great awareness for projects that are coming up. So, you know, it's a great marketing tool on the one hand. And then following on from that, there are curated meetings, and there are other opportunities for projects that aren't selected in pitching live at the big table. Another 30 or so selected for distribution rendezvous or decision maker meetings if you're looking for funding. So there are a couple of options at the festival itself, as well as the industry conference that we run. And then there's a whole bunch of sessions with the broadcasters curators. So there's a 5-day industry conference at the festival built around the pitching forum, and then a whole lot of other opportunities. So it's a great way. The days of a commissioning editor writing a check for $50,000 on the spot are gone. But this is where we're playing a role by bringing in the equity partners who are in the room also evaluating those projects. And we actually offer prize money. I think it was around $100,000 this year in 3 or 4 different prizes for pitches, for projects that were pitched at the forum. So there's an opportunity to actually get some money out of it in a different way than maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So it's great opportunity to get a project on the radar, to have key meetings with people that are interested. Netflix is in the room, Amazon's in the room. They may not be at the table, but they're there. And we work hard. Dorota Leck, who programs the forum, works hard to make sure that as many decision makers and people with money, buyers, broadcasters, are in the room. So there's that. And then we track the projects from the forum. There's certainly, we ask the questions on the submission form about how and if the project has engaged with Hot Docs. Has it gotten funding from us? Was it pitched at the forum? Has it gone through Dealmaker, Distribution Rendezvous, any of those programs? So we know, and I'll have a list of those projects printed out when we're going through the process, but it means that we've got it in mind as we're looking at the films. It doesn't mean they're going to get in. And those are some of the harder conversations to have with filmmakers and with our industry team as well.
Because they've invested so much in the
Yeah,
process.
definitely. But for us, we definitely keep separate church and state. There's no pressure from the industry team. There's awareness of which projects have been involved with us in which ways, but that isn't a deciding factor at all when we're making the decisions. And I think the same applies for festivals, organizations like Sundance that invest a lot of training and money in projects. 3 or 4 times more projects, as many projects than they have room for in the festival. So I think there's sometimes an assumption that I'm in a Sundance lab, I've got Sundance money, I'm in. But it doesn't happen that way, there or in Hot Docs. Is there a second?
The premieres.
The premieres, yes.
The game of premieres.
The game of premieres. So premieres matter. It's annoying to you, to me, to all of us, and yet that premieres are currency at the moment in this world, in the festival world. And I think a key element on the producer filmmaker side is having a clear strategy about what you want to do with your film, how you want to launch your film, what you want your film to do, and having a clear list of the festivals that you want to be, the dream festivals, the ones you're dying to be in, and hitting those festivals first, and then moving on to the next tier of festivals, which are equally valid and valuable and useful for your film, that you'd like to be in, and then perhaps the niche festivals that thematically your film might connect with and really provide opportunities for. For us, for competition, international competition, there are 12 slots in my international feature competition. Those films have to be world or international premieres. That's a pretty hard and fast rule. But for every other section, a North American, a Canadian, sometimes a Toronto premiere will work for those films. So if we fall in love with a film and it's played at a festival in the US or 2, we'll still play it. It won't be in competition, but we will find a place for it and provide a platform for it. For shorts, your short film can be streaming, and if we love it, we'll show it. It won't be in competition, but it's hard. It's pretty hard out there for short documentaries as it is, so we try not to make it any more difficult.
I suppose you've got to weigh up also, there's the industry element of things, premieres and stuff. There's also the audiences. You've got your Toronto audiences.
Yeah.
You want, they want to engage with films.
The audience actually doesn't care so much at all. They're attracted by the film and the story. So, we don't necessarily need premieres for the audience side of things. It's for the industry side of things. It's so that I've got new films that justify industry folks coming to Toronto, from Europe. It's not cheap to get there. It's not a cheap city to be in. So, both on the industry side and on my side, the programming side, we have to help justify their reasons for coming to Canada. And those films in international competition, they will hear from sales agents and distributors once the program is announced, particularly if they don't already have one attached. So that's why, partly another reason it's important for us to have those premieres is because there are fresh new films that the industry didn't know about or hadn't heard of, and now we've given them a little bit of profile in the festival or in the competition section to help launch their journey out into the world.
Or, yep, go ahead.
You mentioned a little bit about the importance of trailers, and I'm sure you see so many examples of good and bad, but if you could give any tips on the best way to cut a trailer or the best trailers that you've seen, or what are the most attractive kinds of trailers?
I mean, I'm definitely no expert on that side of things. Our industry team are, but having a trailer is key. We announce our program, and at our press conference, we show trailers, and I can't tell you sometimes how hard it is to find trailers that are dynamic, that are interesting, that are well-paced, that give you a sense of the story and the film, that are intriguing to show at our press conference. We're dying to show 6-8 trailers there, and sometimes we're scratching to find ones that will work. So as soon as, even before actually you launch your film, if you're thinking about the trailer and getting that ready so that the minute you're selected for a festival, you've got a trailer ready to go. That goes a long way because our marketing team markets the hell out of the films in the festival, and particularly focuses on the ones that we know are going to be a harder sell, the smaller films that we know will be a more challenging draw for an audience. If we've got a trailer for those films, we can pump it out on social media. We can promote the hell out of the film in the trailer. Keeping it short, 1.5 to 2 minutes, is ideal. We've all got shorter attention spans, and leaving us wanting more. Not giving it all away, but intriguing us so that you're leaving us wanting more. We want to see that film. We want to know what this story is. We get a sense of what it's about and what you're trying to tell us, but our interest is piqued. Leave us wanting more and wanting to click that link to buy that ticket right away.
Don't put all the good stuff out there.
Hold something back.
That's what I've been to a couple of films where all the good stuff's in the trailer.
Yeah,
Sure, it's bad stuff.
Fiction films are notoriously bad.
Never documentaries.
Never.
We were delighted to have Shane with us, so thanks to him, Stuart Sloan and all the Docs Ireland team, and especially to Scott Duffield for his recording skills. We'll be back soon, Sarah and I, with a Cinema Day podcast, previewing all the events for the 26th of August this year. But until then, sit back and enjoy this special discussion brought to you by Film Hub NI, part of the BFI Film Audience Network.